TLT, or Translation, Localization and Terminology, it's a collaborative environment that helps project managers, terminologists and developers to centralize the maintenance of multilingual resources. Such resources are used in the localization of applications, websites and in general information exchanges. The interface of TLT presents to the user two main areas of interaction. On the left side, we can see the functions. In the main or center area, we have the definition and the parameters of the selected function. First, let's look into the administrative functions. As an enterprise collaborative tool, TLT emphasizes the principle of strong access management. In TLT, the access management is defined by user management, roles, and events. In the roles management area, we can observe the different classes of users. The business-oriented roles are consultant, researcher, and translator. Clicking on the view properties on top of the table, we can see the rights associated with each role. Examples of such rights are creation of or changing or deleting a code, duplicating codes, access or update of translations, export of data, and so on. The view event sections details the action that have been performed on the system. As you can see in the table, every action is defined by a timestamp, the user who performed the action, the domain that was affected, and the category of the action. Several other details like table affected or the language can also be displayed if relevant for the operation. In the user management area, depending on your rights, you can see, create or change the users. Looking at the profile of a user, we can see that each of them has different access rights to a series of domains. A domain is a form of a dedicated workspace that contains all the resources associated with the work of a specific team. The idea is that each independent team has an assigned domain that is making the collaboration between them easier. Let's look at the domain management area. Depending on the rights given, a user can see a log of actions performed on each domain, see or modify the properties of a domain, publish on the assigned channel, export the data of the respective domain, import data in the domain, or, of course, creating a new domain. Creation of a domain is done only by the users with higher access role. When creating a domain, the user can decide on several important aspects of organization like the following: the languages that will be used in that domain, the master language of the domain, whether the system will create automatically tables during the import operation, and what is the channel where the publication of the data will take place. The publication channels are currently secure FTP servers from where the assigned application will take over the data from. Let's go back to the domain management area. If we access a test domain, we can see that each domain contains a number of tables. Every table has its own properties and can be also inspected for activities performed on it, properties associated with it. A table can also be deleted, disseminated, or exported. The export function allows the user to decide what is the language or the languages that will be saved. We can decide to export all of them, for example. What is the master language in the exported package, and what is the export format. TLT allows us to export data in XML and Excel. A function to create a table is also offered to the user with appropriate rights. Inside the table, there is a list of codes and their associated labels in the master language of the table. For each entry, a user can check the log of actions, check the properties, modify the translations, or decide to delete it. A code is an essential element of the TLT workflow. A code is practically the basic representation of a term. To every code, we can assign labels in all the necessary languages. The code itself is represented as a unique string called code identifier. This identifier is used by the systems and applications to retrieve the exact label needed from the multilingual resource. Depending on the rules defined for the domain, each code has a number of translations associated to it. A translator in TLT is able to access all the translation of a code. Each translation can be modified individually in this tabular interface. Adding a new code is a simple operation. First, the identifier is needed. Normally, the identifier shall follow a structure to be easily connected with the functions, buttons, or messages that are needed to be translated. Inside the publication office, we use a segmented form like area.section.function. We can create, for example, here a code like the following. This will be localized, the localization of the submit button for a search function in our website. We'll add this as the description. We can also decide to create the master language label. We can also decide if that label shall be copied to all other languages or not. That's something that the administrator of the table should be able to know. Once the code was created, the translators with appropriate rights can access the code and start adding translations for each of the languages. TLT offers multiple search features. First, you can search for a code inside your current table. We can look for a code we have created right now, submit for example. The system will return to us all the respective codes, and we can expect them right away. We can also perform operations on this code, like changing their properties or translations from a search result. The search result page also gives us the possibility to create ad hoc lists of codes for further usage. Consider, for example, that we want to create a list of terms that can be used in a search interface. Starting from the search result that we already have, we can select some terms and add them to a so-called basket. Now we can go into the code basket and we will see that the selected codes have been collected there. From the code basket, we can export the list in a file. Then we can, for example, edit the file and adapt it to be used in our own table. To do that, we need to change the target domain to our domain name. Then the name of the table that will be targeted. We go then to the list of domains and perform the import of the table. You can see in the report how many codes have been added and how many tables have been affected. Now if we go to our table, we will see how the codes were added to it. One of the more advanced usages of TLT is related with the collaborative way of working. This is related with the work with the codes using associated tags. We can go for this in the browse section, and we will see that for different domains that are specific tags employed. We can click on any of these tags and the system will return a list of the codes that have the respective tag associated with them. As you can see in the table, the codes are common for different tables. This allows the users to group the codes by function, their status, or any other type of characteristic that might be found important.